Hey, it's me, Nalthazar, and welcome to another Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest video. In today's video, I'm going to be going over the rares from Strixhaven that caught my eye when I was going through the spoilers. So, let's get into it. To start this off, I want to go ahead and give a general disclaimer about some of the cards that are on this list. Some of them are here just because I think they will be very good cards for newer players. And as they are rares, and you're guaranteed to get a rare from a premium pack, these are going to be ultimately more accessible cards for more people. And so as a result of these being more accessible for more people, I've thrown some in here that I think are just really solid cards for newer players. Cards that are going to increase their power fallacy and just make them feel a lot stronger, and that will give them a better shot of doing well in events because they've got really good abilities. So, not all of the cards in this list are going to be for everyone. The ones that aren't, I will point out as such. Also, there's a bunch of cards on this list that have Invoke. Almost all of the ones that have Invoke at the rarity are cards that I don't think that the flip side is worth it. Just one side is good, the other side not so good. So I'll still show both sides like I have in the Mythic and Masterpiece videos, but they are more just to show you that you could also play this other side if you wanted. But I don't think you're often going to want to. So the first card on the list is Archmage Emeritus. This is a 12 mana 4/4. It has Magecraft 2. So the first two spells that you play in any given turn are going to make it so that you draw a card and then give that card half of its mana. This is one of those cards that's absolutely phenomenal for newer players. It's going to pair really well with most of the Planeswalkers that you might want to use at the newer stages. I'm thinking Jace Unraveler of Secrets, or even if you've got some of the dual color walkers. I mean, just drawing potentially up to 2 extra cards a turn and giving them half of their mana is a phenomenal ability. So a 4/4 body for 12 is pretty solid too. Newer players aren't going to have all their Planeswalkers up to level 60. Or at the very least, they won't have the option to have the specific stronger ones with the better mana gains up that high. And so having the lower cost card is going to be really useful for them all around. So if you're a newer player, this is a card that if you wind up pulling, I think you should be pretty happy that you've got in your collection because it's going to put in some serious work. The second one is Blade Historian. This is a card that I think everyone will be happy to have. This is 14 mana for a 4/5, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, all your creatures get double strike until end of turn. This is like double strike Oprah. You get double strike, and you get double strike, and you get double strike, but oh, your opponent? No. You're a naughty boy. You do not get double strike. So yeah, this card's pretty cool. And I like that it's at the beginning of combat on your turn instead of when this creature attacks, because that makes it so you don't have to worry about this thing not having bravery. And you don't have to worry about your opponents, like doing any kind of weird, wacky stuff. Just combat starts, and then all your creatures gain double strike. If your opponent winds up choosing to play something with Flash doesn't happen when combat starts, I don't think. I think it happens when your first creature attacks. So, nonetheless, even if your opponent flashes in removal on your turn, your creatures are going to get double strike. And also, the last piece that's really cool about this being on combat is that this thing doesn't have to attack. So this thing not having haste isn't a really big deal. As soon as you play this thing, it's going to give all of the creatures that you have on the battlefield double strike when they're attacking. So nonetheless, it's just got solid power all around. The next card on the list is Double Major. Double Major is a 5 mana spell. It has Flash and Reinforce target creature you control. That is a permanent reinforcement for only 5 mana. This card is a lot better than many of its predecessors that all cost like at least double the amount that this one costs. So for really just 5 mana, you're going to get a heck of a lot of value out of this card. I see this card being very strong for all players because green has a lot of really powerful creatures. Blue actually has a fair number of really powerful creatures. And if you play this in a multicolor Planeswalker deck, then you're going to be able to reinforce a whole bunch of crazy stuff. I believe that Calamax is the masterpiece that lets you double all your casts that have Flash. This would be an amazing card to throw in a Calamax deck. Granted, this is going to be an amazing card to throw in a lot of decks, So I really see a lot of players getting a tremendous amount of value out of this card. There also happen to be a number of really cool cards in this set that benefit from you having reinforcements, where they give you like more reinforcements based on the number of reinforcements you have, or, you know, general things like that. So I see this being a really good card that you're definitely going to want to have in your collection. Next is Dramatic Finale. Dramatic Finale is a 10 mana support. It is both white and black. It is an enchantment, and while on the board, your creature tokens get +1/+1 for each of their reinforcements. When a non-token creature you control dies, create 2 Inkling tokens. This effect can trigger up to 3 times per turn. Realistically, I see the bottom ability being a largely not used ability, but the top part being the really powerful part, because a lot of our creature tokens tend to be 1/1s anyways that we're able to make just a whole bunch of. So this is going to, for many creature tokens, double their power toughness. For things like zombie tokens, where you're going to be able to get a bunch of them, and they're black, and this is black, I mean, they're going to go from 2 2s for every zombie to 3 3s for every zombie. Nonetheless, I see this being a very strong card in your token decks, and there's just so many different types of token decks that you can make right now. Ideally, most of you got Necromancer's Covenant, so you can go ahead and throw this together with Necromancer's Covenant to do a whole bunch of really dirty things with lifelink zombies. So there's a lot of goodness that you can get out of Dramatic Finale, and I'm definitely going to go ahead and try this out in a number of decks. Not probably with the new Sarah and Angels, because Angels aren't going to benefit as much from the +1/+1 as they will from other things. But for a lot of the lesser tokens that you get a whole bunch of, I see this being a really fun card. The next one up is Echoing Equation. Echoing Equation is definitely going to get a heck of a lot stronger from that card we saw a little bit earlier. This is 15 mana, so that is quite a heavy mana cost, but it's going to reinforce target creature you control X times until end of turn. If it's not invoked, then reinforce target creature you control X times until end of turn, where X is going to be 3 plus... where X is 3 plus? Okay, so, sorry, I got confused because the text there is clearly wrong. Let's rewind. Okay, so reinforce target creature you control X times until end of turn. X is 3 plus the number of reinforcements of that creature. This clearly is not 3 is 3 plus. X is 3 plus the number of reinforcements of that creature. So basically, you take the number of reinforcements on that creature plus 3, and that's how many times you're going to reinforce that creature. So it is absolutely ridiculous. I know that it's only until end of turn, but this just makes it so that if you can stack like multiple castings of this, as an example, you're going to be able to get so many reinforcements on a creature. I'm actually very eager to see what is the most number of reinforcements that someone is able to get off of this in Standard. Especially with all the different things that we have right now that are going to be copying spells and giving us bonus casts of spells and all that kind of nonsense. I see this being absolutely crazy. If we pair this with the Mythic Efreet critter, the double striking red creature that is going to bring back 2 spells a turn and give them full mana, I mean, I could see you just being able to like dump these out and then just start mass reinforcing that thing and doing horrible, horrible things to your opponent. So this seems like a very strong card. At 15 mana, I think it's still going to be good anyways. And this is one of the few where the Invoke side really isn't that bad either. So this one has Invoke for Augmenter Pugilist. Pugilist? I think it's Pugilist. I don't know. This is going to be 12 mana for a 5/5. As long as you control a support with 8 or more shield, this creature gets +5/+5. I think that you're going to find that with all the land supports and with the fractal tokens, you'll wind up getting a support with 8 or more shields pretty easily. And so this will very easily become a 12 mana 10/10, which isn't bad. And then if it's not invoked, when this creature attacks, your non-artifact, non-enchantment supports gain 2 shields. So there are going to be some pretty horrible things that you can probably do with this. It does specify non-artifact, non-enchantment. So beware, do not use this with something like, the Exile, Foretell. Do not use this with Foretell. That will be a very, very poor life choice because you will never destroy your Foretell gems. But If you use it with some other kinds of like silly token makers, then you'll be able to do some pretty cool stuff with this card. So it's not great, but it's not a bad invoke side for what Echoing Equation does. Next up is Ecological Appreciation. So Ecological Appreciation is 11 mana. It's going to have pick one of the first 4 creatures with base cost 10 or less from your library and move that into play under your control. Then, if this card is enhanced 2 or more times, repeat this process and exile this card. So basically, you're either going to get 1 of the first 4 creatures, or you're going to get 2 of the first 4 creatures that are 10 base cost or less. Now, this card is incredible because there happens to be a card in Standard called Eidolon of Blossoms, and Eidolon of Blossoms is 10 mana, and it's green, and this is green. So if you can use Eidolon of Blossoms, you can use this thing. And Eidolon of Blossoms is seriously one of the best cards in Standard. Like, the level of power on that card is absolutely absurd. And this gives you a pretty free way of fetching at least one of them. There are a few other targets that you could pick. You could go ahead and take both Angie and the other mythic red creature. It's like Subira or something. But you can pick both of those, Angie and an Enabler. They're both 10 mana critters. So there's definitely a number of 10 mana critters that are very strong in Standard right now that you're going to be able to get a heck of a lot of use from this out of. I mean, even if you have like a lesser collection and you choose to get something like Volcanic Rambler, I mean, that from Origins, that's going to destroy blocks of gems. I mean, you can do a lot of really cool stuff with this card. So I see this being a phenomenal card for anybody's collection. This is a very good card. Next one is going to be Exponential Growth. With this one, you reinforce target creature you control X times until end of turn, where X is 2 plus the number of times this card was enhanced. So even if you don't wind up enhancing this thing, you'll still be able to reinforce a critter twice until end of turn, and if it is enhanced, it's going to be creating 3 enhancement gems, which means it's going to have a maximum number of enhancements of 3, meaning that this will be a maximum number of reinforcements of 5. So once again, this is just playing into that whole reinforcement game where if you play this and say get like 5 reinforcements until end of turn, and then you start playing this right here, and then all of a sudden this is now giving you 8 reinforcements, and so you've given a creature 13 reinforcements for casting these 2 spells. Yeah, that's going to be nasty. That's going to be fun. You're going to be able to do some really cool reinforced stuff. I love what they've done with the green-blue school here. It's going to be disgusting. So, yeah, very cool. Kelpie Guide. Okay, this might not be a card that stood out necessarily to you in your first looking at this. It's 9 mana for a 4/4. When this creature attacks, reinforce a non-enchantment, non-vanguard support you control. So basically an artifact or a land. And when a support you control loses shields for the first time each turn, if that support has 10 or more shields, disable the first opposing enabled creature until end of turn. Now, my guess is that this thing here was designed to be the best friend for fractals, because it would just reinforce and reinforce and reinforce them. However, there happens to be a card in Standard called Urza, and Urza just so happens to create an artifact land support that will be reinforced every time this creature attacks, meaning it will give, for every time this thing attacks, it'll give, your first creature +4/+4 buff and convert 4 more gems to blue. It will, as a result, get to 10 or more shields in 1, 2, 3 turns, and then it's probably going to be losing a shield for the first time each turn every time it triggers the blue match, so it's going to be disabling the first opposing enabled creature until end of turn. Granted, it's just until the end of your turn, but nonetheless, that's still going to do horrible things in making your opponents able to block your Urza. And so you pair this with, say, Thassa, and then Thassa's going to be disabling your opponent's last creature with the flicker. Either way, you're going to be getting a whole bunch of disable. You're going to be reinforcing Urza's support. And so I see Kelpie Guide kind of being like Urza's new friend, because Urza clearly isn't strong enough how he is right now, and so needed more friends to make him stronger. This will absolutely do that. Next card on the list is Kianne, Dean of Substance. Yeah, she is totally into the green. Look at her. She's like all green. Very much Substance, Dean. Kianne. Whatever. 12 mana for a 4/4. This one's got Invoke into Imbraham, Dean of Theory. And at the beginning of your turn, exile the first card from your library. If that card is a land, this creature gets a permanent +2/+2 buff. If this creature is not invoked, then also convert 4 gems to green. Furthermore, when you activate a loyalty ability, create a fractal token, then increase its level by X, where X is the number of different non-land cards in your exile. So this thing's going to be exiling something every single turn. I'm going to guess that you're probably going to wind up playing 2 to 3 lands in a deck, meaning that this is going to be able to pump out fractal tokens at level 8 or level 9 every time you activate a loyalty ability. And if you're running something like Nissa Worldwaker that's going to be spamming her first ability, then those elemental tokens you've got are going to be getting huge boosts, probably, from the fractal that is going to be coming out and giving you massive power toughness boosts. This thing is going to be converting even more gems to green, which is going to make it so that you're going to be using your first ability probably every single turn, and it's going to be buffing itself up for good measure. In the event that you need a quick recap, what is Fractal? Fractal is going to be this blue-green support that is going to have, so at the beginning of combat on your turn, your first creature gets +X until end of turn, where X is equal to this support's level. Now, we don't know if fractals are going to replace each other, or if fractals can be just multiple supports on the battlefield, or what. But whichever way you look at it, these fractals are going to be absolutely filthy. They're going to make your creatures get massive buffs, and this thing is going to make lots of those fractal tokens very quickly. So this is a potentially terrifying card for all players. All you need is Nissa Worldwaker. If you don't have Nissa Worldwaker, don't worry. Even Nissa Sage Animist, which I believe is the name of the Origins one, is going to be, or is that the blue-green one? Oh man, there's just too many Nissas. It's bad news bears for me. I don't like it. Whatever. I do actually like it, but you can use this with Origins Nissa and spam her first ability. Between the gem conversion that does and the gem conversion that this thing's going to do, you're going to do wonderful things for yourself. Now, Kianne's Invoke partner is Imbraham, Dean of Theory. This is a 14 mana 5/5. It's got Magecraft 3, that brand new mechanic. So for the first 3 spells that you cast on your turn, you're going to exile the first non-spell card from your library. At end of turn, you may pick one of the first 3 different cards from your exile, fetch that card, and give it 7 mana. If you do, exile the last spell card from your hand. Then, if this thing is not invoked, this creature has both Hexproof and Vigilance. This side, not so good. I don't like it very much. The other side, Kianne, like 9 out of 10. This is going to be a fantastic card. So, good stuff. Much good stuff. Next up is Pestilent Cauldron. Pestilent Cauldron is a 7 mana support. It has Mana Field, and it has Invoke. It has, when this support loses shield for the first time each turn, create a Pest token. If your opponent has 15 or more cards in their graveyard, then you're going to be creating 3 Pest tokens instead. The Mana Field ability for this one is going to destroy the top 3 cards of each player's library. So if you make a match in any gem that is adjacent to this support or on the support, then you will trigger the Mana Field. Furthermore, if this isn't invoked, then at the end of your turn, exile the first 4 cards of target player's graveyard. Then draw 2 cards. So this is here because I absolutely love the idea of pairing this with Tibalt, because the Tibalt Planeswalker's second ability makes it so that when we exile things, they come into play under our control, and then we get sweet, sweet goodness. So the question really is going to become, does this thing trigger and then give us creatures from our opponent's graveyard, and then do they make it to our next turn, or do they just die at the end of our turn because of the way that Tibalt works? So if they make it until our next turn, and then we get to attack our opponent with them, then this thing is going to be fiendishly strong with Tibalt. If they don't, then this will not be fiendishly strong with Tibalt, and will instead just be a gimmicky card. So that's really what it comes down to. I think that if it does work that well with Tibalt, it'll be really fun to use. If it doesn't work that well with Tibalt, it won't be as fun to use. At the very least, having a way to draw 2 cards per turn with black is really nice, because black needs more card draw. The Invoke side is Restorative Burst. Restorative Burst is not good. I really don't see you using it very much, but let's look at it anyways, just in case. It's 9 mana and has pick up to 2 of the first 4 different creature or vanguard cards from your graveyard. Fetch those cards, then each player gains 6 life, and exile this. If this is not invoked, you gain 4 life for each non-spell card in your hand. I really don't see you getting a whole lot of use out of this. I mean, just bringing creatures back from the graveyard is kind of nice with Gather the Pack from Origins, which lets you dump creatures in your graveyard, but then you have to use 2 cards to start fetching creatures from the graveyard. It's just not the way that I would go about building a deck. So I do like the potential idea of Pestilent Cauldron. I do not like Restorative Burst. So just, I would use one, not the other. Next up is Plargg, Dean of Chaos. This is 13 mana for a 4/4 with Invoke. When this creature attacks, discard the last card without mana from your hand, then draw a card. Then, when you match 4 or more gems, fetch the first non-legendary, non-land card with the base mana cost of 8 or less from your library and give it full mana. If you haven't invoked this thing, fetch the first non-legendary card with the base cost of 11 or less instead. So this I see being super fun with all of the land forming and all of the red gem conversion that we currently have in standard. I don't see this being completely overpowered because you're fetching a card that's either 8 or 11, and if you're running the land forming cards as an example, the Shatterskull Smashing is going to cost 6 mana and Valakut Awakening costs 7. If you're running some of the better red gem converters like Valakut the Molten Pinnacle, that's an 11 mana land. If you're running, I want to say it's Castle Embereth, the red one, that's going to be 10 mana. And so you're probably going to draw into those every time you make one of those red cascades, but it's every time you get that red landfall, not cascade, landfall. So with this, I just see you mass pumping cards onto the battlefield. So I see that being really, really cool and really, really fun to play with. So this is one where I'm definitely going to have to do some testing with it, see if I'm able to get those red landfalls as often as I would want. I see this being a really fun card. I don't see it being a really necessary card. The flip side to Plargg is Augusta, Dean of Order. This is a 3/5 for 12. It cannot be disabled, and when a creature you control attacks, that creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. When a creature you control blocks, that creature gets +0/+2 until end of turn, and while on the battlefield, your creatures gain Vigilance. So this is a card that just isn't going to have a whole lot of power in Puzzle Quest. The most fun that you're going to be able to have with this thing is probably just spam Gigantiforming it, because this thing can't be disabled, so you can just keep Gigantiforming it and not have it get disabled. But if you're going to do that, you might as well use the common jellyfish, because that's kind of more silly because it's a jellyfish and it's a common. Either way, you could run both, but this card just doesn't quite translate to Puzzle Quest in as strong of a way as it is in paper. The next one is going to be the first of our commands. So this is going to be the Quandrix Command, so the blue-green command. The commands are a new cycle of spells. There's one for each of the schools, and they are all going to be using the new enhanced mechanic. So Quandrix Command is 12 mana. It's, as I said, blue-green. It has a maximum number of enhancements of 7, but this also means that when you get this card in your hand, it's going to immediately produce 7 enhanced gems. That is a ton of gems to get enhanced just for getting this thing in your hand. So if you draw multiple cards in a turn and you draw multiple copies of this thing, you're going to be putting out 7, 14, 21 enhanced gems. That's just absolutely ridiculous to me. So perform one or more of the following effects according to this card's enhancements. If it has only one enhancement, then if your opponent has 5 or less cards in their hand, return the first opposing creature to your opponent's hand. If it has 2 enhancements, you get the first ability, and your first creature gets +X/+X, where X is going to be the number of times this card was enhanced. If it has 3 enhancements, you get the first and second ability, and drain all the mana from the first X artifact or enchantment cards in your opponent's hand. So the first 3, because it would have 3 enhancements, or, if you've got more enhancements, then it'll also give it more. And then finally, the fourth ability is if you've got 4 or more enhancements, then you get abilities 1, 2, 3, and convert X times 2 gems to blue or green. X is going to be the number of times this card was enhanced. So since this thing can get a maximum of 7 enhancements, the maximum ability that you're going to be able to get from one of the Quandrix Command casts is, let's pretend for a moment you've got 7 enhancements on this thing. Then you're going to be converting 14 gems to blue or green. You're going to be draining all mana from all of the artifact or enchantment cards in your opponent's hand. Your first creature is going to get a +7/+7 buff, and if your opponent has 5 or less cards in hand, you're going to return the first opposing creature to your opponent's hand. So it's just that every single one of these abilities are good. Specifically, the first and fourth abilities are absolutely fantastic. And so with how many enhanced gems this thing makes, this could wind up being a very good card. I mean, if you put this in the new Will and Rowan as an example, that Planeswalker does so much damage for having enhanced gems out. Like, it's unbelievable how much damage you're going to be able to do with that thing. So if you run different commands in that deck, oof, you're going to make a lot of enhanced gems, and you can just kill your opponent with your Planeswalker abilities. Like, it doesn't even really matter what cards you have in your hand. You just kill your opponent with Planeswalker abilities. So I see this as being not only a really fun card, but potentially a very powerful card. I don't see it being powerful on its own. You will probably need to have other cards to make it powerful. But if you're able to build up your collection from this set and you play with some of the walkers from this set, you're going to get a heck of a lot of value out of this card. Next is going to be Search for Blex. So Search for Blex is going to be another invoke card. It's a 9-mana spell with pick up to the first 4 different cards from your library. Fetch those cards, then destroy the others. Then lose 3 life for each card fetched this way. To simplify, you get to pick either 1, 2, 3, or all 4 of the first different cards from your library and fetch those directly to your hand. If you choose not to fetch any of those, the ones that you don't fetch get destroyed, so they get dumped into your graveyard. And you're going to lose 3 life for each of the cards you choose to fetch. So you're going to lose a maximum of 12 life, and I'm guessing that you, since it says pick up to the first 4, you can choose to pick 0 of them and just dump all of them in your graveyard. Nonetheless, I really like the idea of a 9-mana spell that lets you just dump the first 4 different cards directly into your graveyard, because we have so much graveyard recursion in Standard, or heck, even in Legacy, that I see this being a fantastic enabler card. And then if you wind up needing any of those cards, then you can just go ahead and fetch those cards. So you can use this to fetch your lands. You can use this to fetch your removal. You can use this to fetch your recursion. You can use this to fetch a creature. You can use this to fetch something like Shadow Spear if you need more life. So it's just, this has so much utility that I see this card being able to get a lot of play. If it's not invoked, create X Pest tokens, where X is the number of different creature cards in your graveyard, is not a great ability. Maybe pests wind up being good. Maybe you wind up having fun building a pest deck, and so you want this for your pest deck. But the most number of different creatures that you should have in any given deck is 4 if you're including a mutator. But if you're not including mutators, it's 3. So create 3 pest tokens is not a big deal. That said, the flip side of this, Blex the Vexing Pest, not the Vexing Pest, Pest, Blex Vexing Pest is actually quite a fun-looking card. So Blex Vexing Pest, wow, why am I having such a hard time saying that? Blex Vexing Pest. Is that like a tongue twister or something? Blex Vexing Pest. Oof, that's hard. Say that 3 times fast. Blex Vexing Pest. Blex Vexing Pest. Blex Bugger. I can't do it. Oh well, I'll try again later. This is a 10-mana support. It has Invoke. This support can't be reinforced. It has 3 shields. While on the board, your bat, insect, snake, and spiders get +1/+6 for each of their reinforcements. When this support is destroyed, you gain 6 life. If this thing is not invoked, at the end of your turn, your opponent loses 6 life. So even if you just choose to play Blex Vexing Pest, hoo-ha, that was good. At the end of your turn, you're going to be draining your opponent for 6 life per turn. And we have some pretty fun ways of making snake tokens, spider tokens, insect tokens. I'm thinking of you, Scooter. I mean, let's say that you put like Mantle of Webs on one of them to give them +1/+3 and reach. And then it's going to be getting +1/+6 for each of its reinforcements. Oh my gosh, if you're playing with those things that have tokens and then they just spam out tokens, like 5 tokens is going to give that thing +5/+30. There's really not a lot that's going to be able to swing through that. So Blex Vexing Pest seems like it could be a really fun card to use in that it will have power. It's not going to be like, oh my gosh, this is the best card in Standard. But it's going to definitely have enough power that's going to probably give you a few giggles if you choose to play with it. Next up is going to be Silverquill Command. So this is going to be the command for the Silverquill, the black-white school. So this is going to cost 12 mana, just like with the Quandrix Command, the blue-green one that we saw earlier. This one has got Enhanced 7. So it's going to, as soon as it enters your hand, it's going to enhance 7 gems on the battlefield, and it will be able to gain a maximum of 7 enhancements. When you cast this, perform one or more of the following effects according to this card's enhancements, just like Quandrix Command. So, if this thing is enhanced once, destroy the last opposing creature. Pause. Even if this thing is enhanced just once, you're good. Destroy the last opposing creature for 12 mana is a bit expensive, but it's non-targeted removal. So, that's fantastic. I would be fine with casting this just for one enhancement. But there are more effects that you get from this. So, let's go over them. The second one, so let's say it's enhanced twice. You get that first ability, and your first creature gets +X and flying until end of turn. By the way, all X costs for these commands are going to be based on how many times it's enhanced. If it is enhanced 3 times, you get the first ability, the second ability, and return the first creature with base power X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield with its reinforcements. And finally, 4, you're going to gain X loyalty and lose X life. So let's pretend for a moment that this thing has 7 enhancements. What's the maximum effect you're going to get from this? For 12 mana, destroy the last opposing creature. Your first creature gets +7/+7 and flying until end of turn. Return the first creature with base power 7 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield with all of its reinforcements and gain 7 loyalty and lose 7 life. So this is just a phenomenal card. Like, all of the abilities are good abilities, and the best ability is the first ability. So it's going to be really easy to get that. So I see this being a card that I throw into probably a lot of my white decks and many of my black decks because of the potential for recursion with reinforcements. So yeah, this looks like quite a good card to me. Next up, oh, this thing. What? That silence was intentional, by the way. It was a moment of silence for all of the games that you were going to lose because you face this card. Oh my gosh, I don't know why this card exists. I laughed for minutes, plural. I read this card, and then I went to pick up my kids from school, and I laughed the whole way there because this thing exists. Or it doesn't yet, thank goodness, but it will exist. Why? Okay, this is 10 mana. It has 2 shields. When this support enters the board, drain all mana from the first spell card in your opponent's hand. While on the board, spell cards in your opponent's hand can't gain mana. Okay. Why? Like, almost all of our support removal is spell-based. We have very little creature-based removal or support-based support removal in the game right now. We have Doom Foretold in Standard, which is a white-black mythic, so not super accessible. We have Conclave Naturalists, which is from Origins, and I believe comes with Nissa, Origins Nissa. And if it doesn't come with Origins Nissa, then you're guaranteed to pull it from one of the reward packs early on in the story. So it's a card that you're going to have, but that's a 4/4 for 10, so it's not a particularly strong card on its own, apart from the fact that it destroys supports. We've got Kogla, King Kong. That thing's going to destroy an enchantment every time it attacks. But you're going to start to notice a pattern. Green creature. The white-black is a support, but yeah, pretty much all of the things that are going to be able to get rid of this are going to be green creatures. So, oof. If this thing starts getting reinforced, too, and starts getting bonus shields from something, I mean, this is just such a prohibitive card. Like, I'm all for really strong cards. I love really strong cards, but cards that are prohibitive, cards like Insidious Will, which is a 6-mana support that makes it so that you you can't cast things, right? Especially because, you know, there happens to be a card called Starfield of Nyx that's going to make that thing come back every turn. Or, just cards sort of like that, things that lock down the board and makes it so you can't do things, right? If you're playing the game and you can't do anything, that's not super fun, right? But if you're playing the game and like your opponent does something really big and then you wind up being able to respond to it, that is super fun. So, I mean, like, one way around this is that you just have 2 support removal spells in your hand with full mana, because this thing comes out and then you have 2 of them, so it drains the first, and then you play the second, but you just pray that the second one is going to destroy this thing because you don't have targeted support removal. I know, I'm definitely not generally a negative Nancy, and so I try not to be a negative Nancy or ever like post videos of like rage, but I think that this card is going to be a card that's going to inspire a lot of rage in a lot of you guys. So just be warned that this thing is going to exist, and no, I don't know why it's going to exist like this, because this thing is prohibitively nasty. Like, I mean, even in Legacy, like, think about it for a second. Like, I never thought I would say this, but thank the gods for Omniscience, because that thing just makes things cost 0, and so you can still play your spells with that. But, I mean, you play this thing against green gem conversion, and then what? Like, seriously, what do you do? That's basically game over. And I know this thing only has 2 shields, so maybe you're going to be able to match blue gems and destroy this thing, but maybe you don't. And maybe then you just get steamrolled. So, if this just means that we see less green conversion in, like, the blue version of Trial of the Plains, cool. But I don't think that that's all it's going to do. So, just be warned, this thing is going to exist and is going to ruin your day. So start thinking of ways to get around this. Another way around it, by the way, just for all of you who are like, what are ways to get around this thing? You can use Vraska. Vraska 1, her first ability, this is black-green Vraska. Her first ability is going to destroy supports, so that's a fantastic option. Also, Teferi, Hero of Dominaria's third ability, that is going to definitely destroy this thing when you draw cards. So we still have a few ways of being able to get rid of this, but you're going to need answers to this. Just no matter what, you're going to need answers to this. Like Ruinous Ultimatum, Mythos of Nethroi, they're not perfect answers because they're spells, and you can't give Ruinous Ultimatum mana if this thing exists. So, next card, please. Witherbloom Command. This is the Witherbloom Command. Duh, Michael. This just said that in the text. By that I mean it is the black-green command. It's 10 mana. Like with the other commands, it has 7 enhancements, or it makes 7 enhanced gems and can be enhanced up to 7 times. Once again, all of the X values are going to be based on how many times this card is enhanced. So let's start to go over those abilities. Ability 1. Destroy the top X cards of each player's library, then convert X gems to your Planeswalker colors. Yes, please. Ability 2. So if this thing is enhanced twice or more, you're going to get ability 1 and destroy an opposing non-land support with base shield X or less. Once again, yes, please. If you've got 2 enhancements on this thing, it's going to destroy anything with base shield 2 or less. If you have multiple spells charged in your hand and your opponent is a tool and uses this, Witherbloom Command will destroy it with 2 enhancements. The third is going to give you abilities 1 and 2, and the first opposing creature gets -X until end of turn. And then finally, ability 4, so if it's enhanced 4 times, you get the first 3 abilities, and your opponent loses X life, you gain X life, where X is going to be the total number of times this card was enhanced. So let's pretend for a moment that we've got the maximum number of enhancements on this thing again. Then for 10 mana, you're going to destroy the top 7 cards of each player's library and convert 7 gems to your Planeswalker colors. Then you're going to destroy an opposing non-land support with base shield 7 or less. Then the first opposing creature gets -7 until end of turn. Then your opponent loses 7 life and you gain 7 life. So this is just a card where it does a whole lot of things. I love the whole destroy the top X cards of each player's library. That's phenomenal. I see myself getting a whole bunch of use out of that. But then it also converts gems, which is extra spicy. It also destroys non-land supports. This is a fantastic ability for Black. Black loves things that destroy supports, because Black normally doesn't have access to that. Granted, I know, Mythos of Nethroi and Ruinous Ultimatum both exist, and Black gets a new support removal uncommon spell in this set, but nonetheless, the more things that we have that do that, the better. Green appreciates it too, by the way. Yeah, green doesn't have Mythos of Nethroi or Ruinous Ultimatum. It does have the Great Aurora, it does have things like Kogla and Conclave Naturalists, but it will very much appreciate having more support removal. So then also being able to kill your opponent's creatures and do other stuff. This is a really cool card. It will be a card where you definitely need to have other cards with Enhance in your deck in order to get serious value out of it, because this is one that does rely on many enhancements to be good, whereas some of the previous ones did not, but it's still going to be quite a good card. So this is the last of the cards on my chase list for rares. I think that the rares in this set are incredibly powerful. Someone on the previous video, the Mythic video, asked me a question, and I know them at the end of the video here, but I wanted to go ahead and answer that question right now. I'm going to respond to you in the comment section of that other video too, but just for everyone else that's wondering this, which was, the Mythic Dragons are very strong, but what about the non-Mythic Dragons, right? So if we were to remove the Mythic Dragons from the set and just look at this set from a free-to-play player's perspective, what is going to be the power level of this set? And so the first thing I'm going to say to that is that you don't really have a way of knowing what the power level of a set is going to be until you play with it. But what I'm getting from reading all the different cards in this set is that this will probably be the most powerful set that came into the game since the Ravnica set. And I'm going to go ahead and say that I think that Ravnica was the strongest set in the game. So this could very well wind up equaling that set in terms of power, but it also could wind up being weaker. I don't know. I have to play with the cards. But there's just so many utility cards that are multicolor that you're going to be able to use with so many different planeswalkers. It just really feels like there's a lot of power from common all the way through masterpiece. So like as you build your collection of this set, regardless of the rarity cards that you're getting from the set, you're going to be getting good cards in your collection that are going to make it so that you have better games. So yeah, that's my general thoughts on the set. Anywho, we are at the end here. This has been a very long video, so I want to cut it. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.